Yeah, don't worry about it. I don't notice. I don't notice it too much.
Okay.
Okay,
Cool.
cool. So I think we're setting up to go live right now. I am loading up. Here we go. All right. All right. The meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. All right, let's do this. Perfect. Oh, wow. We've been live. We've been live for like 15, 20 minutes already. Great. I love it. It's
Nice.
like the Zoom, there's always a lag. Okay. Awesome. All right, y'all. So thanks so much for tuning in to Wednesday Wisdom today. I've got a special guest today. I see eyeballs coming in. Say what's good. Say what's up as you're coming in so I know who's watching. Hey, Jason. So I'm super excited to, oh, I see a bunch of eyeballs coming in. Awesome. All right. Say what's up, y'all. Say hi so I know who's watching. Okay, awesome. Okay, super excited for our guest today. We haven't had a Wednesday wisdom session in a couple of weeks. So this is my friend Victor. Victor is one of my entrepreneur friends, right? So obviously, like, I've been, telling my folks inside my container, like, yeah, like in the entrepreneurial world, there's a lot of crossover, self-development, because I feel like they go together. So anyway, so I'll introduce Victor to you guys a little bit, tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll get to it because I definitely want to hear about his journey and how we can really learn from, some of the things that he's learned, as well as the mistakes that he's made, and, and how he continues to succeed and crush it, in what he's doing. So Victor is actually in the house flipping business. You weren't always in the house flipping business. This is where your entrepreneurial journey has led you, which we'll talk about that journey in a second. But Victor is actually technically a college dropout. And what I love about it was, it wasn't like, and it was like a fancy thing that you were studying too. You were studying biomedical engineering. It like
Right.
sounds and looks so fancy on paper. Like you're clearly a smart guy, like random, like I feel like you gotta like have some kind of like, good head on your shoulders to be like, I want to study biomedical engineering. It's like, what? Like that sounds so intense. And so you were studying biomedical engineering and then you decided to drop out of college because you were like, I don't think this is it for me. When I'm sure a lot of people would have been like, what? Like biomedical engineering? Like, why would you, like, you're so smart, like that engineering, like, why would you quit that? And then you've kind of stumbled along and now you're in house flipping. Like, who would have seen that coming? Like, did you know at all that that was what you were going to do? Or did you feel like the path found you?
It was honestly like the path found me.
That's what I
So
figured. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So wait, hold on. So how long were you in college before you decided to drop out?
Fair question. I was in college for 2 years
Okay.
total.
Okay.
I studied bioengineering and actually had a full ride, which made the decision even harder. So
Holy
it was like,
shit.
so yeah.
Oh my God. Where? Do you mind if I ask?
I went to University of Utah.
Okay. Wow. So you had a full ride for biomedical engineering, bioengineering?
I
Holy
think
shit.
it's interchangeable. I don't know if it
Yeah.
matters.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay. So wow. Okay. So this is, I feel like this is already a story. So you had a full ride to college and then 2 years in, you were like, this isn't it. Oh my God. Were your parents so pissed?
So they were, and they've gotten over it now because they've seen like how I've been doing. They're seeing like, oh, we're just super successful. They've gotten over it now, but there's definitely a ton of resistance right at that moment. Because it's like, because I was halfway through, like I had 4 years, I was 2 of the 4 years through, and that was part of the resistance, like, hey, maybe just finish, or hey, drop out now. So
Yeah, wow. So like, can we start there? Like, what made you like take the leap when it sounds like so outside of the box, right? Like you got a full ride, like you're gonna get a degree in something that's obviously gonna make you good money after you're graduating. But like what? Like, how did you even actually end up making that like final decision? Like, what was the thought that you were having?
for sure. So what my family's full of engineers. So mom's a chemical engineer, brother's a mechanical engineer.
Wow.
So as I was trying to figure out college, I was like, well, engineering seems cool, so I'll get into that. So I got into the bioengineering, and then I quickly found out like, hey, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
I saw like not only like I didn't like the coursework, I didn't like any of the projects. That was a big part of it, and then I also didn't like I part of like the program, like we would meet people who were ahead of us in their career. So they'd be like 2 years ahead of us working, or like 10
And
years.
you're like, none of these motherfuckers are happy. What the fuck? This is bullshit.
That's spot on. Yeah. So that was the same reaction I had. And then it was part of it, like just seeing where they're at and what they're working on. I'm like, I don't want to work on that 10 years from now. So I saw where I'm at and the whole road and my whole career path ahead of me, my whole life ahead of me. For next 50 years, I'm like, yeah, this isn't for me. I need to make a change. I need to do something different because this isn't working out.
Well, why didn't you just change majors? Why did you like go the extreme and fully drop out?
Fair question. Fair question. I was asked that a lot too. So part of it was like, okay, so bioengineering isn't a good fit. So I started to think of like, what else could I study? And at the same time, I was always very entrepreneurial. Like I knew I want to someday start my own business. Like I want to do something on my own. And with that framework in mind, it just never made sense to me. Like you don't go to school for entrepreneurship. Like you don't go to college for entrepreneurship. So I was looking at all the other degrees. I was like, should I even get a degree if I want to be an entrepreneur, or want to be a business owner? So that's where I came from with regards to that. So it just made sense. Like, why even get a degree if this is the career path I want? And I know people. I started networking and meeting people back then who were entrepreneurs. I'm like, I got along with them. Like what they're working on was cool. Their trajectory seemed super cool. So it just was a much better fit. Much better.
Wow. So you basically so basically the reason what I'm hearing is you decided to fully drop out because you knew that you wanted to be an entrepreneur. You didn't know what you wanted to be an entrepreneur in, but you knew that getting a degree wouldn't necessarily get you there any faster. So you decided to pull the plug and just go all in and start the entrepreneurial journey.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So then what's the first thing you did after that? How does one even start that like out of nowhere? Like, cause for me, like I always knew what I was passionate about. I started my career in fitness. It naturally evolved and like the path, yes, the path found me, but I was always meeting it at the same time, right? But for you, like it sounds like you kind of started out of thin air. So what did you start with?
So that's pretty spot on. Yeah. So just left and I didn't really have a plan. I was just like, well, I'll just do some sort of business stuff. I always figure like I can always go back. Okay. Just business stuff. Yeah. I'll just do business. And I always figure like I can always go back. Like I know I dropped out, but I can probably talk my way back into it if I had to come back in a couple years. So I thought of it like an extended gap year, I guess, is how I convinced myself. So that's how I thought about it, at least. Who knows how much of that was true.
Right.
So part of it, I basically finished that spring semester and had the summer to not really do anything. I wasn't forced to do anything because typically students take summer off anyway, so it's not like I was forced to do anything. I think I was maybe working at the time, but nothing crazy. One of the first things I did, I started following a mentor and started following him, and he always said like, hey, it's easier to buy a business than to start your own business. I was like, oh, that makes sense. You buy a business and you have employees, you have everything set up, and you just kind of run it and making better versus starting from scratch. So I'm like, okay, cool. So did some research and I bought a business. I bought a wood floor refinishing business.
Oh, interesting. Oh my God. Now I feel like I'm starting to see the pieces come together. Wood flooring and then homes, and then eventually got into flipping homes. Interesting. Okay, got it. So like, did you feel like you had some good success there? And then like, I'm assuming like you must have had enough success to kind of like, I want to jump ahead a little bit. Like, I feel like I'm assuming like that's kind of what led you to start getting interested into real estate, right? And like house flipping, because you were.
Looking back, it makes sense.
Uh-huh.
At the time, it wasn't clear. Like, okay, wood flooring to house flipping, and then actually counterintuitively, it didn't go great. It went terribly. It was a disaster buying the business. So happy to talk about that too.
When you say that it didn't go great and that it was a disaster, can you just give me the high level of like what happened?
Of course. So basically what happened, like I had a mentor at the time, and essentially I was like, okay, I'm gonna go buy a business. And he's like, okay, you know what, sometimes it makes sense to buy a business, like cool. And then I'm like, okay, hey, I want to buy this business. I told the mentor, like we talked about it. And he's like, no, don't do that. That's a bad idea.
But your mentor actually told you not to do it.
He told me not to do it. Yeah.
Oh, and you did. Oh, no. Okay. So this is what we were talking about earlier about not listening to mentors.
That's right. Yeah. He's like, yeah. So he basically said like, hey, don't do it. Like, do something else. Like, I don't want to get into the details of this specific business, but he's like, hey, this specific business, it's not a good fit for a number of reasons. And I'm like, okay, cool, but I'm still gonna do it. I was worried like when you buy a business, you put a little bit of money into it, like a little escrow, like, hey, I'm interested, I want to buy it. So I put like a baby toe into it, and basically I didn't want to lose that little bit of money, which was kind of silly, like sunken cost fallacy type of thing. Like,
Okay, wait, hold on. We need to pause on this because if we're using my language for a moment, what happened was that your scarcity mentality got the best of you.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
because what you said was, well, I've already invested this much
Yeah.
and I don't want to lose this much. So I might as well go all in and then end up losing more, is kind of what happened. I
That's
feel
what
like that's
happened.
what
Yeah.
you're saying, right? So what I'm hearing is that you were afraid of losing the little baby toe that you had already put in. So then you move towards the fear. I'm getting somewhere with this because this is something that I talk about with my clients all the time. We so often do things because we're afraid of what we're going to lose versus like trusting what we can gain. And
Mhm.
so I feel like in that moment, which of course makes sense, you were like a baby in your entrepreneurial journey. It sounds like the scarcity mentality got the best of you. You went towards what you were afraid of losing.
Mhm.
So you
Spot
made
on.
your decision based on what you were afraid to lose.
Exactly. So I was afraid of losing that little bit. So like, well, I don't want to lose this little bit. Let's just go into it. And it was just a disaster from day one. So
Oh my God. How did you get out?
so what happened? So I was running the business for a while. It just wasn't going well for a number of reasons. I didn't like it either.
Uh-huh.
And then eventually I just cratered and crashed. And I just ran out of money. I kept on pushing it and pushing it, unfortunately. And it was just one of those things, like I was like, okay, get another credit card. Okay, I used all that limit, just
Mm.
fully spent out. So I had $0 in the bank. And that's when it was like, okay, well, I can't I can't go anymore.
Well,
So just
this is
pulled
so
the
interesting because like, this is so interesting because in many ways, part of like what we kind of teach our own clients, and by the way, Victor helps other people flip houses in case I didn't. He doesn't just flip houses. He's also now, he helps and mentors other people to help them flip houses. I should have added that. So that's why this conversation is relevant because now we both mentor people, right? In our
Mhm.
own respective ways. And so, in many ways, we tell our own clients to push it, take those risks. How come you like what was it that was driving that? Like at what point did you realize that you weren't just taking risks anymore and that you were actually sabotaging yourself? Because I can see that being really hard to make the difference, right?
I don't know if I knew it at the time. Like looking back, I know it, but at the time, I was like, I just need a little more time. I just need this one more thing to save me. Like I was always looking for that next like magic bullet type of thing, versus realizing like the entire thing is messed up. So I kept on like, if I just have another month, or if I just do this other marketing thing, or if I just do this other thing, like it's gonna be cool.
Got it.
I just didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what I was doing. So it was just.
Got it. Yeah. So at that time, if you could like go back to that, at that time, what do you wish you would have known that would have got you out of that pain and that vicious cycle of being on the hamster wheel faster?
I think it's one of those things. I'm glad it happened. So I wouldn't even change anything. Like I'm
Of
glad it
course.
happened so I can learn from it, just to be where I'm at. But I think the biggest thing, because it got gradually worse over time. So again, like the mentor said, hey, like don't even get into it. And then I was still working with him like the entire time. And he's like, hey, like you can always pull the plug, or like you can. I just didn't listen to him at all throughout the entire process. And it could have stopped, and I could have saved. Like it would have cost me like a little bit of money, like we talked about. It ended up costing me a lot more.
That's
Um,
hilarious.
yeah.
So, okay, so basically that whole thing, it sounds like we can simplify it and say, I just didn't listen to my
Just didn't
mentor.
listen.
I
Which,
just didn't listen. Isn't that funny that we like pay mentors and coaches and we still don't listen? Like, what a mind fuck, right? We're like such resistant assholes sometimes. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
that's why I was very arrogant back then. I still am, but to a much lesser degree.
Right.
And I was just so arrogant. I was like, I was paying him, which was, I was paying him, but it was weird. Like I didn't listen. I was like paying him, and he was way more successful than I was. I still wouldn't. I just do my own thing, which was
Yeah.
didn't make any sense. But
Yeah, I know. Like it's like so wild that we do that, that we like and it's like it's not even like our parents, right? Because we don't pay our parents per se. Like we're literally like paying these mentors and coaches and we don't listen. Like, wow, what a mind fuck. That's crazy. So let's jump ahead a little bit to house flipping, right? So
sure.
I really appreciated that story because I feel like the big lesson there was listen to your mentors, right? Like especially, and I think this is what I heard you say also too, is like, especially when you know that they clearly have success. They've
Yeah.
clearly done some shit. So like, why wouldn't you listen to them? Like, why would you think that like you're somehow going to do it better when like you haven't tried it at all before them? Right. So I think that that was a huge lesson for there. Then let's fast forward to like you flipping houses, right? So how did you end up deciding, like, how did this path end up finding you? And how did you decide that this was something that you were going to go all in with? Because Victor has been doing house flipping and he's been involved in it for about 6 years. But
Mhm.
about 2 years ago, he was like, this is it. This is my path. I'm going all in. What made you realize that this was it? Because I think that's like a big thing that even a lot of my clients are always searching for too. It's like, how do I know like this is it? Right.
Mhm.
So, and I know that it's a journey, it takes time, but like, what do you feel like was maybe some of the defining moments for you?
Yeah, so that was the ending of the wood flooring refinishing business, and I tried a ton of other businesses, and then eventually got into like healthcare, and then from healthcare went to house flipping. So that was the transition there. And really, what was interesting, like I think a good signal that you want to do something, or a good signal like you have a passion for something. I found out about a guy, and he was using a specific marketing methods to get real estate deals. And I was like, this is so cool. Like this is super, super cool. And what I would do, I would try to convince others to like join his program or to like, do the real estate, like, hey, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And it wasn't like me saying to them, I was just trying to say it to myself. So just more projecting. So that's really what it was. And I try to convince like 4, 5, 6 people like to do his thing. And I'm like, why am I should just do this myself. I don't know why I'm trying to convince everyone. Nobody wanted to do it. They're like, I don't know, I don't know about real estate. I don't know about all that stuff. But then,
So, so what I'm hearing is that like, so what I'm hearing is that you were drawn to it enough to the point that you found yourself excited about it and telling other people about it and telling other people like you should check this out. And now in hindsight you're like that was actually the exact sign that like this was for me.
you know,
I
mhm.
love that. So then you actually did end up enrolling, and then that was now you ended up getting another mentor to help you in the house flipping. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah. So
Got
I
it.
made the transition.
Got it.
I was working full time then. So I started to do this on the side with the flipping houses and getting into real estate. So I started to do it on the side.
Mm.
I always wanted to be the entrepreneur. So I knew I had to make that transition from like working because I had to make ends meet. Like, I had to work and make money. So I had to make that transition from full time to entrepreneur.
Yeah, I love it. So then did you listen to this mentor this time, or was there still resistance?
So I did learn this time. Yeah, no, I did listen, which was good. And then, yeah, just decided to take the leap. And what was good with the real estate, like I started to see some traction, like started to make progress, like started to get deals and get closer to money and like making money so I could replace my previous income and then made the full-time leap.
I love that. That's amazing. And then now you also help other people flip houses as well,
Mhm.
which I mean, like, I feel like everyone at some, not everybody, but I feel like a lot of people at some point have been interested in that because you hear about these things, like, oh my God, it can be so lucrative and this, that, and the other, like I have a client who also does that as well. And it's like very lucrative for them, but it's incredible that you can actually teach other people how to do that as well. So there's clearly like a very clear process for this, and you've been able to do that. Now, are you able to teach other people how to do it because you had a mentor that taught you how to do it? Or are you able to help other people do it because you kind of, by listening to your mentor, you were able to then find your own way and now you're able to transfer that on?
So it's both for sure. So not only am I taking his teachings and implementing it and teaching it as well, I'm also taking my own experience and like packaging that up and showing and sharing with people as well.
I love that. And
So
so how long have you been helping other people flip houses now?
about a year. Yeah, it's been about a year, but I really picked it up the last 4 months or so.
That's amazing. Okay, so this is now something that I really wanted to ask you too, because um yesterday when we were on a call together, you were sharing about how we all have clients, right? Like you have your own clients that you're mentoring with flipping houses. I have my own clients that I'm mentoring through all of their growth and healing and self-transformation and whatnot. And then you were sharing how, of course, no two people are alike. So everyone's going to get different kinds of results, right? However, with house flipping, it's like, you want to make sure that all of your clients are getting the best results as possible. But, everyone shows up in different ways and everyone's going to get different results. And so you were saying like that you have some clients that clearly get results and they make such big gains right away. And there are some that just like don't really take off. what do you feel like are the biggest differences between your clients that really take off and get results from working with you and the ones that don't? Because you're probably teaching them all the same shit, right?
That's right. So I'm teaching them the same thing, and it always caught me by surprise, the disparity. Like it's the same stuff, and somebody with no money, no anything, they go out and they're killing it. They're doing better than me. Like their first deal is bigger than mine, my
Right.
biggest one. And then there's some people who like I can never get a hold of them again. Like I try to call them or like, hey, how are you doing? Can I help? What's on your mind? And they just ghosted. So there's that
Guys,
huge.
this does sound familiar.
Yeah.
You just said I can't get a hold of them, they ghost. I'm like, oh, that sounds like what happens to me too. And then but I'm very like public about it, and I'll be like, hey, you guys, hey, like, do you want this or not? So that's interesting. Okay.
So
But
that
then
happens. So there's that gap.
yeah,
So to answer your question directly, what I think it is, I think it's a translation. Like people always say action, like action, action. I think there's always the same level of action, but for some people it's just mental action. Like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. Or like, hey, it's all in their head. And then there's some people who do like the physical action, like they pick up the phone, they get deals, all that stuff. So I always think it's the same amount of action, but it's like, where is it occurring? Is it occurring in your head, or is it occurring out in the real world where it's actually becoming something?
okay. And so then obviously your clients that end up getting the best results are the ones that are actually taking the physical action.
The physical action, exactly. Yeah.
100%. So they are the ones that are literally showing up,
Hmm.
making the calls, booking the calls. They probably show up to the coaching calls with you. They probably ask you for help. They probably reach out. They're probably responsive. They literally like are physically there. They're not just like taking in information. What I always say is like, you don't need more information, you need transformation, and that comes through action. So that's really ultimately what I'm hearing from you is like they just actually take the physical action.
Exactly. And just like you're saying, like they're the most engaged. Like if they're commenting the most, posting the most, that's a good leading indicator. Like, hey, they're going to be the most successful. So I can even tell with a student, like if they're going to be successful. Like the flipping houses takes time, and that's fine. Like real estate transformation takes time to change your life. But I can tell ahead of time, a couple months ahead, like who's going to be successful. And that's the person who reaches out to me, because I can't help somebody if they don't like tell me what their issues are, like what their problems are, like what they need help with. If I try to call someone and they ghost me, like how am I supposed to help that person?
Oh my God, you sound like me.
Driving over there and
Yeah.
knocking on their door.
Oh my God. Okay. So this is awesome because you are literally saying the exact same words. Like this is solid fucking gold right now because I just love how no matter what it is that you're trying to accomplish, right? Like Amy saying like, help me help you, right? Like
Right.
no matter what it is, whether you're trying to flip houses or whether you're trying to become the best version of yourself or you're trying to heal your, or whatever, it's like at the end of the day, you got to show up and you have to take the action. And everything that you're saying is literally the same thing that I say too, where I'm like, if I reach out and you don't get back to me, if you're not responsive, like I can't help you. And the ones, and I noticed that too, like, yes, transformation takes time, but I can usually tell right away too. It's the people who show up. Even if you're not enrolled in programs like Jason, if you're still watching right now, like Jason, I see you, Jason, like you're not even enrolled in one of my programs, but I see you like participating. I see you like saying hi first. I see you logging on to the Facebook Live. Like that is what's up. Like when I see that kind of behavior, I know right away, I'm like, oh, like this person, like they can like, I can tell like there's a really, really good possibility and trajectory for change because you are literally showing up in some way, shape, or form. And I love even for you that you're even talking about posting and engaging and commenting because even in your house flipping business, you clearly have a community and a Facebook page and things like that too. And even in house flipping, the more they are engaged, like they're also more successful. So once again, it doesn't matter what it is that you're trying to move the needle on, engage, show up, be responsive, take action. I love that. That's amazing. That's like so freaking transferable and so amazing. And so can you just inspire us a little bit? Like what does one do? What is good for someone doing a house flipping deal? I have no idea. Can you give us some numbers? Because we love to hear it.
Oh, sure. Like you want me to share like a typical deal, like net
Yeah,
profit?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, give us some numbers and tell us what happens in the house flipping world. Like
Oh,
what
for sure.
yeah, what's a good deal?
So what's really cool about house flipping, like you do one deal, like it can really change your life. So like even one deal. So my typical average net profit, like this is after all expenses, but before taxes, typically like 30,000.
Mhm.
So if I, write a check $30,000 to the average person, like that'll change their life. Like they can pay off debt, they can, just live more comfortably, have an emergency fund, like all that sort of stuff. So that's
Yeah.
the typical deal. I've had a lot of students that, just like we're talking about, like one of the best students I have, just engages the most, asks the most questions. Like she's under contract to sell in about 2 weeks here. She's gonna get like an $84,000 deal. Like that's to
Her
her,
first deal.
that's her first deal. Yeah, like the first one. That's not typical. Like she did a really good job. Don't get me wrong. But it's one of those things like that's life changing money. Like that'll shift it'll shift things for you for real.
That's amazing. And once again, it's because you said she asked really great questions. Is there anything else that you feel like really stands out about her so that we can learn from her? So that I can learn from her? What stands
What's
out?
What's interesting, like she didn't get discouraged the first time around because she had a deal she was working on. Like I think I started working with her like back in June or July. And like the first 2 or 3 months, like she had a deal she was working on and then it died. Like it
Oh,
just didn't go through. And instead of like giving up, like, hey, this isn't for me, like she kept at it.
mm,
And because of that, like she overcame that initial adversity and just kept at it. And that's the toughest when it's that darkness. Like you get that first deal and it falls through, and you're like, oh, okay, now what? Because you don't see it in the future, obviously. Like you didn't know. If she knew now, then she wouldn't have any heartache back then. So it was part of that. So just knowing like, hey, it didn't go through the first time. Yeah, it sucks, but she kept at it, and here we are.
I love that because that's so applicable to everything, right? Whether it's people that are like applying for jobs, right? Like my clients that are like looking for their dream jobs, or like dating, relationships,
Yeah.
um, like literally anything, like even, just any kind of like life goal, success trajectory that you're on. It's like, like if it doesn't like work out the first time, like, if you tap out, like you tap out. It's just really that simple. It's like, are you really going
Mhm.
to tap out here, or are you going to keep going? And the thing is, I love with her example because she was working on something, and it sounds like she was working on something for like a couple of months, which
Yeah.
is not a short time. Like that's a good chunk of time.
Mhm.
And it didn't work out. And she could have easily said, oh, this isn't for me, but she kept going. And now she's getting the biggest deal that you've ever seen for somebody's very, very first
That's
deal,
right. Yeah.
which totally makes it was just like accumulating. It was just accumulating. And I say that all the time with my clients too. It's like you just gotta trust it. Like for some people, yeah, that win's gonna come right out the gate at week 3. For some people, it might not come until a year later or 3 months later.
Mhm.
But you gotta trust that like whatever is coming, like it's gonna be fucking perfect and better than you imagine if you would just stay in it. And you just can't tap out like the first sign of it not working out for you. So I love that. Allie, I'm thinking about you right now. More on this, another conversation. Allie, you know what I'm referring to. So, anyways, I love that. Is there any, because obviously, like we should wrap up here at some point, but is there anything that, that has been really transformative for you, Victor, in trusting yourself and trusting your ability to go from college dropout to disaster first business, not listening to your mentor, to now like having a multi 6-figure business and helping other people? Like what has been like the thing that's been driving you, and what's been the thing that's kept you confident enough to keep showing for yourself and not go back to school?
Well, at this point, it doesn't make sense to go back to school. So let's we can start with that. And then with the parents and all that, like they're less pushing me back into it because it wouldn't make sense
Yeah.
to get back and make 40K, 60K. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but they've seen the potential.
Yeah.
What's been I really think it's really comes down to mindset, all that stuff, like all of the like the marketing tactics, sales tactics, all that stuff. It's all I don't want to say
Tactics.
but it's like it's like tools in the tool belt, and you have to know how to use the tools. Like you have to be comfortable with using the tools. Like they have their place and they have their time, don't get me wrong, but it was always mindset. So what I always found is anytime I made a positive shift in mindset, my income would follow positive, and like it would bump up. So obviously when I started listening to mentors, like I started to get deals and started to make money. And when I started to work and like resolve past like imbalances and negativities in my life, like income got even higher. And it really just came down to mindset. I think part of it is like to not to get too metaphysical, like the exterior world is just like an illusion. It doesn't exist. You just have your mind. It's
Can
like,
you, no, we love this. We would love you to expand on this. It is not too woo, nothing is too metaphysical for us. So go all in, please.
okay, sure.
Give it all. Give it to us all. Yes.
No, so it's all an illusion, right? So you see light reflected and it hits your eyes, and your brain has to process it. And so if you vaporize this square foot above your head, nothing exists ever for now and eternity. So like you're gone. Everything you've ever known is gone, basically in death, right? So
Right.
everything only exists in your head. So it's all mindset. So especially with understanding like where your mind is and where it what you're thinking is just really key to doing all this. And like I've had thoughts that like you create your reality, which is in a weird way to say it. Like you have these thoughts, like affirmations, visualizations, and then it happens. And I've been on the flip side of that, where you have negative visualizations, negative affirmations. Not that you're doing it, but like your fear keeps popping up, and then like that negative stuff happens. Like you're saying like, oh, I don't want this bad thing to happen. I don't want this bad thing to happen. Bad thing to happen, and the bad thing happens. You know.
I mean, this is exactly where I always say, like, worrying is just praying for what you don't want to happen. You know, it's like, please, 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 I don't want this thing to happen. It's going to happen anyways because I keep worrying about it. So, yeah, no, absolutely. Like, you're totally speaking our language right now. So please continue. We love this stuff. Yeah.
What's also crazy, like, it's one thing for me to experience it, but I've seen all my students. So, like, them in their personality and their mindset, like the exact opposite thing that has to happen to them for them to grow happens. So
can you give us an example? I love that.
I'm trying to think of an example. So this is like a flipping example. Like, so a student has a worry, like she has a renovation timeline of a month. And she's like, we have to stick to this month no matter what. This month, if it goes longer, then we're fucked, we're done. And it's like, well, the renovation actually took 2 months or took 3 months or something like that. Like, so the exact opposite thing that had to have happened. Or like, let's say a student is like really controlling, they need like every little detail to be lined up and perfect. What just so happens where something happens and she learns like, I have to let go, I can't just be there for every single little thing, and it just happens perfectly. Like, yes, it sucks in the moment, but looking back, it's like, especially from my perspective, just looking back, it's like, yeah, oh, that's awesome, that's perfect. And then what's also interesting is now you can kind of predict the future, so to speak. Like, their personality, where they're at. So you're like, okay, well, this is what your life's going to look like for the next couple months.
Oh, 100%. And you're definitely speaking our language, because it's exactly right. That's so much of what I teach my clients as well, too, is like, you got to trust the process. And yes, like, it's okay to want what you have. But the thing is, like, the more you grip, the more it's probably going to like actually like fall apart, and it's going to be even worse for you to handle. So instead, it's like, yes, want what you want, but then also trust that like whatever evolves and shifts and changes in the process is exactly perfect, and it's actually exactly what you need to get to where you want, almost even better than what you had originally hoped for in the beginning. And I feel like that's part of what you're saying too, right?
Yeah, spot on.
I love that. What are some you want to share a couple of your like own personal like tricks or anything, like tricks, but like any of your own personal practices that like has helped you continue to keep growing and continue to like see your business grow and like see your like clients like succeed? And like, is there anything that has like helped you personally?
Yeah, for sure. Do you want, I'll attack it from all angles. So I can talk about like tactics and like specific daily things, and then I can talk about high level stuff. So let's start high level stuff.
Just a little nugget of everything is great.
Sure. There we go. So for the high level stuff, there's a principle, or like an idea called importance. Are you familiar with this, or is this new?
I probably teach exactly what you're about.
Probably teach it. Okay, maybe it's a different word. So it's the idea of importance. It's basically what we're talking about, but it's packaged nicely into a term. So the idea is, so for example, like when we're all in school, or when we're all in college, or all in school, there are people there's going to be a test, and there are people who are like freaking out about the test. They're like, oh my God, there's a test. I have to get an A. I have to get an A. I have to get an A. And then there are people who are like cool, calm, collected about it, like, oh, there's a test. Okay, whatever. Ironically, the people who are the most worried about it do the worst on the test. They're like, oh, I failed the test. Everything's messed up. Everything's screwed up. And then there are the people who are cool, calm, and collected about it. And they're like, oh, I aced the test. I got the highest score. I got the highest score. So I know a lot of people can relate to this. I know I related to this as well. So that's the idea of importance. So the more importance you put on something, like, hey, this has to happen, just like we're talking about, the more like imbalance there is, and the more likely things are going to go wrong or something's going to negatively happen or
I
something.
love that word. I love that word because I would call that attachment
Oh,
or
okay, cool.
control, but it's the same thing. And I love that word. I actually love importance. I love that word because to me, it's like, I mean, I do talk about it a lot of in other ways too, like especially if I'm in one-on-one. It's like, I'm like, oh, this is just so important to you, isn't it? You know? And so, but it's the same thing, it's attachment. But I love that word too, to like, it's a really, really great way to also reframe it too. It's like, why do you care so much? Like, why is this so important? Like, let go of some of that grip and it might actually end up turning out even better. So yeah, important. So
Exactly.
so that's something that you really try to practice, is like you try to get like,
Yes.
you try to be really aware of like how much importance you're putting on things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like a good way to detect importance is saying like, oh, if you're really frustrated about something, like there's some sort of pain going on where like, okay, like this has to happen, or like you're anxious or you're worried or something's going on. That's the signal like, okay, hey, maybe this thing's way too important.
Yeah.
So, okay, so importance. Okay, so how do you deal with importance? I don't know what you teach. I can share what I teach. There's a couple ways. So the first is just let it fail. At the very least, you can just like, well, what if it does get fucked up? Like, what if things do go wrong? Like, okay,
Yeah.
whatever. You just gotta like release it from there. Like, let it burn. It's fine on some level. Like, what if the business does fail?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
if
I
the
love that.
thing doesn't happen? So that's the
Mm,
first thing. Another thing you can always do is like add secondary project, or not secondary, like exit strategies. So it's
mhm.
like, hey, if this doesn't work out, I can do this, or I can do
Plan
this,
B.
I can do
Yeah.
this. Yeah. And then just lowers the importance. You're like, well, okay, well, if the thing doesn't go through, I'll just do plan B. I'll just pick up plan B and I can start doing plan B.
I love
So
that.
stuff like that. And then like meditation is really good for lowering importance. But
Mm,
so there's that. And then you can tap. So that's the third thing. Then fourth thing is like you can tap into abundance. So if it's just like, let's say you have one deal and it's the only deal you have for the entire year, you're going to be, that importance is going to be way high. You're going to be like,
yeah.
yeah, I got to get this deal. It's the only deal I have all year. If you have 100 deals for the year, your importance is going to be low. It's like, oh, one of my 100 deals fell through. I still got 99 of these things to look at.
Right.
So that's the
I
that's the
love
technical like kind of deal with that.
Yeah, I love that. It's very much in alignment with a lot of the things that we teach. So I love that. I always love when folks come on and they can reinforce the things that we're learning and the things that we're trying to practice in like their own language and their own words. And I know that we gain so many nuggets from that. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Victor. If you guys are still watching and you're getting any takeaways, please, share in the chat. We still got eyeballs, so folks are definitely listening and still tuned in. So I appreciate that. So any takeaways, anything that you're learning from that, anything that's helping you in this moment, go ahead and just drop that in the chat. Thank you so much, Victor. I love that. Is there any other pro tip that you would maybe leave with us, as far as like, okay, so if you try to practice less importance, which is what I would say non-attachment, right? If you try to practice like less of like this grip and importance, right? With that said, then like, what do you focus on then? What is important to you
Hmm,
then?
that's a good question. I honestly have no clue. Yeah, no. So you just lower the importance, and then you just look at other stuff. I don't know. Or you still focus. How do I say it? Like you still focus on other stuff, but it's not, doesn't have the emotional ring to it.
Hmm.
Like you can still look at the same thing, but it's not like you have to have it or you have to do it. Um,
Yeah.
but hopefully
Like,
that answers your question. I
no,
can't.
I know. It's like, oh, that's hold on, let me think about that. Because you do have a thing. You just probably haven't like ever been asked that before to like name it on the spot. But I think ultimately what you're saying is that you trust the process, which is something that I talk about all the time with my students. It sounds like you don't grip super hard. You don't, you try to really practice non-attachment. I'm just using my language. It sounds like you actually do try really hard to be aware of too much of your importance tendencies, and you try to practice as much non-attachment as possible. And ultimately what you do put your energy in is just trusting and just knowing that like whatever it is that's going to happen, it's going to be a good outcome and it's perfect. And you're actually always improving and always increasing and always stepping into more abundance, which has probably been the case for you, right? You've probably only seen yourself trend upwards in the last few years, right?
Yeah. So maybe day to day doesn't feel like it, but looking back a year or 2 years ago, it's like, oh, I'm in a totally different place.
Yeah, yeah. And wouldn't you say like that's something that I think we can end on this note. Something that I always talk about with my clients too is like it sounds so cliche and simple, but the journey isn't linear. Like the day to day, it's like the stock market. You don't watch the stock market on the day to day. It's way too volatile. But like if you zoom out and you look at the trajectory over the last year, 5 years, 10 years, you are always trending upwards. And it's like that's just there's like literally no other way as long as you're showing up. And I feel like you're saying the same thing too.
No, that's exactly right. And like one of the things I want to leave your audience on, I just made a post about this myself. Like other thing, like I know we talked about mindset and importance and all that stuff. Another big thing and big key is just getting started because your path isn't linear. It is exponential if you do it right. So my first year I did 2 deals, 2 flips. Second year I did 8 flips. Last year I did 20. Now I want to do 30. And it's not to say like, whoa, I'm so cool doing so many flips. My point is like it's not a straight line. It's like if you get started and you get started soon, like that, you get those long-term benefits even more than you can think. So that's why it makes sense to get started. If you can't get started yesterday, get started today.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for saying that because I talk about that so much. Time is the most valuable thing we have. It's the only thing that we can't get back. So if you already know that you want to improve anyways, like what are you waiting for? The sooner you start, the quicker you're going to get those exponential gains because it's not linear. As a matter of fact, it takes leaps, and I see that in so many ways, whether it's your personal goal, like if you just start doing the work, period, like it's not like you're just going to make 1% gains every day. It's like, it's going to feel like 1%, 1%, all of a sudden it's going to go 50, then it's going to go 100, then it's going to go 500. And I feel like that's exactly what you're saying. So I love that. Thank you so much for leaving us with that. I think that's always something that we need to hear over and over again. Amy said, I held on to having to practice law as success. So when I decided not to practice law, I had to let go of attachment and that false notion. And that was the only way to success. Yeah, exactly. And like Jason said, formal education or degree doesn't always equal success. I let that weigh on me for many years. So yay, I hope that was validating for you, Jason. And just continuing to just reinforce that like there's no one way to journey and that there's success can be found in so many different ways. And the sure shot way to do that is to just fucking show up and to just show up for yourself and just start doing the work because you will get there. So I love that. Thank you so much, Victor. Appreciate you jumping on and sharing just your journey and giving us some nuggets that continue to reinforce all the things that we're really trying to do with our lives. So I appreciate you. I'm going to go ahead and sign us off of live for now. So
thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. If you guys want to learn about house flipping, holler at me and I'll link you up with Victor. Maybe you'll get 20 deals like Victor did at some point. Lord, that's crazy. All right, y'all, signing off. Happy Wednesday.